Hi, Pastor Adam here. I'm so thankful that you've joined us for this video content. As we share the Word of God every Sunday, we record it with the hope that it's going to bless somebody well beyond the Sunday service. So thank you for watching. I have two things to lay before you. Number one, have a Bible open. The Word of God is powerful, it's alive, it speaks to you. Open a Bible and follow along with the video as you're watching. Number two, this content does not replace belonging to a local body of believers. So you can consume this online, you can listen to it on a podcast, but more important than just hearing this is being a part of a group of people who can come alongside you when you're hurting, who can lift you up, who can build you up. You can be discipled, you can learn about the gospel. Do that with people. If you're local to Newaygo County, Second Church here in Fremont has an open seat for you. If you're not local, that's okay. Pray that the Holy Spirit would find you a place where you can belong. That's my prayer for you. Thank you so much for watching. God bless.
Please be seated. Good morning, everyone. I feel like with enough of us in this park, we should be able to hear each other. So I'm going to do that again. Good morning. Do you hear the difference? That's a crowd of people excited about Jesus. We are at the center of our worship service this morning. There's a lot of feedback going on right now. We've done a lot of things this morning. We've sung about Jesus. We have talked about ways in which we can be the hands and feet of Jesus. We have done a lot, but the one thing we've not done is asked him to speak. And so if you brought a Bible, that is the purpose of gathering on a Sunday. So if you brought it, awesome. We're going to be in the Gospel of Luke chapter 8 this morning. If you didn't bring a Bible, but you did bring a cell phone, I have a hunch that if you asked Google, you could find it. So I just love if everyone would have a Bible open, digitally or physically. Luke chapter 8, we're going to ask Jesus to speak to us this morning. The cool thing about our relationship with the Lord is it's not with a God who is far off. We don't serve a God that we have to impress in order for him to listen to us. We serve a God who gets in the mess with us, who comes to us, who looks after us, who seeks after us when we're missing. And so we talk to him through prayer. He talks to us through the Bible. If you want to hear a word from God, you just have to open his word. So we're going to do that. Before we dive in, I'd love if you would join me in prayer one more time. Good and gracious King, we thank you that you loved us so much, so very much, that you gave us your Son, your only Son, that through his life and his death and his resurrection, we might be brought back into relationship with you. We thank you for that relationship where we can just call out and you answer us. And we ask that your Spirit would be moving this morning, that you would help us to better understand this text that we read, that you would help us to see you more clearly and to follow you with a fierceness that is worthy of the praise that you command from us in your word. We ask that you would enlighten us to the people around us that don't yet know you, so that we can be a witness to you for the nations. Pray that our worship this morning would be pleasing to you, we ask in Jesus' name. Amen. So Luke chapter 8, we're going to begin in verse 26. We're going to read a story that is, I think, relatively familiar. It's not just in Luke, it's in 3 of the Gospels. And what I find in reading this particular story, it's the story of the demon-possessed man. If you're unfamiliar with it, Jesus just got done doing all kinds of ministry near his home, and then he gets in a boat and he sails across from Galilee to a region called the Gerasenes, which is not a place super friendly to Jewish people. It's not a place that's super right with religion. It is a place that is super right with false religion. There's lots of different problems going on, people worshiping all kinds of things. And what you're going to find is that Jesus, very much like today, Jesus steps in to a place where otherwise you wouldn't think he'd be welcome. And I think that should be encouraging as we read this, because today we're celebrating the reason we all gather together. It's Independence Day, right? This is our Independence Day service. So a couple of days ago, we celebrated fireworks and our country's independence from oppression. And you have to sort of notice this. Our country's really good at celebrating that. You can't not see it. I don't know if anybody noticed there were some explosions in the sky over like every lake. And I just moved here, just a little in case you don't know who I am. I just moved here. I've been here about a year. And back in Florida, there's like one fireworks celebration in every like major city. And you watch it amongst like thousands of other people and you're like, "Ooh, that's amazing." And then it's over. Here, we started on the 3rd, which for the record is very confusing for an outsider. People are like, "You should come to my house for the 4th of July. I'm like, "Awesome, what time?" They're like, "Oh, like 7 or 8 on the 3rd. I'm going to be honest, it took me a minute. I figured it out. We saw fireworks that might have been the most amazing fireworks display I've ever seen. And then the next day was the actual 4th, and we went somewhere else and we saw it again. So as a country, we're really good at celebrating freedom. So I call it the message freedom, but I also, if you know me a little bit, I have an issue with celebrating things and then missing the point. So I know that we celebrate the 4th of July and it's freedom from oppression from a country that we came from and we wanted to set up our own thing. But I can't help but notice, if you've looked at the Bible for more than like 4 seconds, the whole Bible's about freedom. And so rather than try and figure out a way to connect fireworks and the 4th of July to a gospel message, what I thought I would do instead is let the Bible speak for itself, if that's okay. Because it's a better story of freedom than our country's ever going to tell. And I love our country, don't get me wrong. But I love the Bible more. So hopefully that gave you time to find it. Luke chapter 8, beginning in verse 26, it says this: "They sailed to the region of the Gerasenes, which is across the lake from Galilee. When Jesus stepped ashore, he was met by a demon-possessed man from the town. For a long time, this man had not worn clothes or lived in a house, but had lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet, shouting at the top of his voice, 'What do you want with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I beg you, don't torture me.' For Jesus had commanded the evil spirit to come out of the man. Many times it had seized him, and though he was chained hand and foot and kept under guard, he had broken his chains and had been driven by the demon into solitary places. Jesus asked him, 'What is your name?' 'Legion,' he replied, because many demons had gone into him. And they begged him repeatedly not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and so he gave them permission. When the demons had come out of the man, they went into the pigs, and the herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and was drowned. When those tending the pigs saw what had happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out, sitting at Jesus' feet, dressed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. Those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Then all the people of the region of the Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them, because they were overcome with fear. So he got in a boat, and he left. The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away, saying, 'Return home and tell how much God has done for you.' So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. That, my friends, is the word of the Lord. He talks to us, and there's something really powerful in this story. There's a redemption in this story. There's a freedom in this story that I think is super appropriate for a day like today, where we're celebrating as a community the freedom that our country has. And I think that it would be easy to miss because we don't talk about demons much. Maybe you do, I don't know all of you personally, but demons are typically not like a coffee table conversation. But Jesus believed in them enough to go help this guy. This guy believed in Jesus enough to cry out to him. And so I wonder, for each of us, if the demons can cry out and beg him for mercy, and as Pastor Joel talked earlier, if the problem begins inside our hearts with our sin, then I think if the demons can do it, so can we, right? So I want to talk about freedom in 3 different ways this morning. I think there's 3 different freedom themes here in the text. I want to talk about freedom from sin. That's what Jesus has done for us. But I also want to talk about freedom from temptation. And there's a lot of those in this world. And then I want to talk about what we're free for. Because I think that's the thing that gets lost on us as a country. What are we free for? And I have a hunch if you ask most people, well, we're free to vote, or we're free to exercise religion, or shoot off fireworks, or wave a flag, or whatever. But I don't think that's it. I think that's the thing we miss. And so we're going to talk about freedom from sin, we're going to talk about freedom from temptation, but then we're also going to talk about being free for kingdom building. Our nation, I think, was trying to do that at the beginning. And I think we've gone astray somehow, and this is not a political sermon, so I'm not going to talk at all about how to fix our nation, but I am going to talk about how the kingdom is built. And with Jesus as the cornerstone, I look out at a sea of bricks in that building. That's how I want you to look at yourself. I don't know that I've ever asked anybody to think of themselves as a brick, but I'm doing it. We are the kingdom he's building. So that's what we're free to do, is find other bricks, to seek out lost people, bring them in. I don't know everybody's heart this morning. I don't know if anyone here is far from God. I hope that if you are, this is a message of confidence building in your heart that draws you near to a God who is longing to call out to you. So let's get back into it. If you still have your Bible open, it opens with Jesus arriving in the Gerasenes, which is across from Galilee. He steps ashore and immediately he's met by this guy. Like the first thing that happens, this man comes running up. If you drive through, I think, any town in the United States, what you'll find is that typically the shoreline and the cemetery are not near each other. So it says this man lives among the tombs, naked and not in his right mind. And yet Jesus steps off the boat and this is the first thing that he encounters. So I guess the question we could ask ourselves is whether he's possessed by a demon or not. That's a lot of walking to meet a person you don't actually know. To ask him to do something for you that you don't actually want. Because the demons are like, I don't want you, dude. I don't want you to hurt me. I don't want to be near you. I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want to wrestle with you. Also, he's naked, and so if you ever see someone walking from a cemetery naked towards the shoreline, typically it draws a crowd, right? I mean, I would follow. What are you doing, man? Why aren't you clothed? How can I help? So he gets to the shoreline, and he says to Jesus, like, go away, leave me alone. You're not needed here. And I almost wonder if that's a message that gets echoed to us when we bring up our faith amongst perhaps what we could call like a modern day oppressive demon, whether or not it's a demon or not. You ever walk in someplace and you've got a cross necklace on, or you were just like left church and you just like everyone looks at you because you're dressed nicely on a Sunday and they're like, what is your deal? You ever feel that? Like suddenly you're not welcome? Or you bring up a conversation and around the dinner table with some family that aren't yet saved, and you're like, hey, can I pray for our food? And they're like, whatever. Talk to your sky daddy. Ever had that feeling where like you just not, Jesus is confronted with that immediately. What do you want from me, Jesus? But then he ends that with something I think we need to notice. He says, don't torture me. He says, I beg you, don't torture me. And so I wonder where he gets that thought from. I've never really thought of Jesus as a torture-y kind of guy. Right? Usually, if you ever see a painting of Jesus, he's not usually angry. Ironically, he's usually blonde, and he's got like a giant crystal golden smile, and which are also wrong. But this demon-possessed man has a particular challenge. He says, don't torture me, because he doesn't want to go into the abyss. And so my question, I guess, is, where's the abyss? Why doesn't he want to go there? Because we always think of demons as like loving it, right? They're in the abyss, they're just having a blast, they're doing the torturing, but that's not the witness of Scripture. The witness of Scripture is that actually Jesus is the person who does the punishing. It's God's wrath that we're saved from, and it's because of sin that we deserve that wrath. All of us, starting with me, or I guess starting with Joel, because he said it earlier. That wasn't supposed to be funny. So if Jesus is the guy who brings the wrath, then the demons, wherever it is that they came from, came first, and they're anti-God, then probably they're getting punished also. And they're probably not super fond of it. And so they're like, I don't want to go to the abyss. Don't send me there. Don't torture me. And Jesus commands them to get out, and then they have a suggestion. They're like, hey, maybe the pigs. I'm gonna ask you to put me in pigs. That's the logic the demon has. Actually, I'm saying demon. We just learned his name is Legion, and it's Legion because we're many. There's lots of demons in this man. And if you've ever, just to take like a rabbit trail for a second, if you've ever seen someone who's just having a really hard time, that we learned a little bit about Rooms of Refuge, which is a ministry to people having a hard time. And often people who have mental illness find themselves homeless, and then we say from like a safe distance in our air-conditioned home, we say, oh, they're wrestling with demons. Anybody wrestling with demons? You ever said that? Did you ever think about where that saying came from? Now, I'm not suggesting everyone with a mental illness is demon-possessed, but what I am saying is this experience is not all that different from things that still happen today, whether they're possessed or not. And what does Jesus do? Jesus says, I'll have compassion on you, and I will make sure that your life is a witness to me. So what that means is regardless of the demons you are wrestling with, regardless of the hard times that you're experiencing or the bad things that you've done in your life, regardless of how wretched a person you are, to go back to the Romans passage from our confession time, regardless of that, your life is a testimony to the faithfulness and goodness of Jesus and the transforming power of Jesus. So he frees us, just like he frees this demon, from the grip of sin in our lives. He lets us go free from that. The demons are sent into this herd of pigs. And what's really ironic is pigs are an unclean animal. And so to the Jewish people, they wouldn't have gone near those pigs anyway. And also, the tombs are an unclean place. And so the Jewish people wouldn't have gone to the tombs. And so actually what's happening right now is there's a Jewish Messiah who's talking to a man who is living in an unclean place, possessed by demons, which is the definition of unclean, asking to go into an unclean animal. It's just a smorgasbord of bad stuff. The witness that Jesus gives us here is, I'm going to step into your mess. I'm going to need you to play along. So if you've ever spent any time thinking to yourself, well, this is a thing I can't talk about because it's just too bad. It's not, Jesus doesn't love that about me. I'm not sure how I can talk about this with my brother or sister in Christ. How do I go to my church with this problem? How do I even get saved with this? Jesus doesn't care. Jesus is here for you, just like he was here for this man. So, okay, the demons go into the pigs. Pigs run off the cliff. No more pigs. And everybody saw it. And they rush into town and they tell everybody what happened. And then there's a turning point. If you still have your Bible, look back down at verse 34. When those who were tending the pigs saw what happened, they ran off and reported this in the town and countryside, and the people went out to see what had happened. When they came to Jesus, they found the man from whom the demons had gone out. Remember the demon-possessed man who was super naked? He's sitting at the feet of Jesus. He's dressed, and he's in his right mind. And so I guess the question has to be, was he walking with a suitcase? Why wasn't he just wearing his clothes? Probably not, right? Which means somebody sacrificed something of themselves, to this man so that he might be clothed, because they didn't stop at a store along the way. I have a hunch it was probably Jesus. Here's my cloak. The guy was sitting at Jesus' feet. Radically different. Radically different. He was dressed. He was in his right mind. I feel like there's some parallels there. In the book of Hebrews, it talks about how we'll be clothed in the robe of Christ's righteousness. Our shameful nakedness is covered over by the work that Jesus has done. The sin that we have in our lives that exposes us and makes us vulnerable. That starts all the way back in Genesis 3 when God says to Adam, who told you were naked? And Adam's like, well, obviously. He covers over that. He covers over your sin. You are free from that. It doesn't burden you anymore. It burdens him. That's why we have a cross as an illustration. Because on that cross, Jesus said, this is not your burden, it is mine to take for you. Welcome home. So you're free from sin. But then what does that look like? Because I don't know, I'm not in your head, but I'm certainly in mine. And so on a daily basis, I walk around knowing two things. I'm definitely a saved person, but my mind wanders. I get angry with people instead of loving them. I think things I shouldn't. I have bitter thoughts. I think if we're all honest with ourselves, if we all do an accurate assessment of who we are as people, I think you'll find that you probably have similar problems. I think if any of you in this crowd is pretty sure you don't, one of two things has just happened. Either you're Jesus or you're lying to yourself. And I think it's probably not the first one. So how is it that we're freed then? So, okay, what happens in this text is sort of the illustration that we really need. He's dressed, he's in his right mind, and then it says, those who had seen it told the people how the demon-possessed man had been cured. Well, what exactly is it that happened? It wasn't like a dog and pony show. Jesus didn't like throw a smoke bomb or get up and start shouting things. He just said, I'm choosing differently for you. And the man was changed. It doesn't mean he's a different, completely kind of person who is now perfect, who never makes mistakes, because he still lives in a world that is fallen. He's still a fallen person. But a change has happened. And so when he's tempted, I feel like he can look back on this moment and say, if Jesus thought enough of me to change me, then the thing that I'm doing, I should probably not be doing. In Romans, which we've already heard once today, the things that I don't want to do, I keep doing. What a wretched man I am. Who's going to save me from this body that's subject to death? But then the good news happens, right? That's what Joel told us. Jesus is going to save us. I want to teach you something that I need you to keep in mind. There is a primary difference, and I say this all the time in my church. There's a primary difference between a sinner who is saved and a sinner who is not. Because we're all sinners, right? So let's just get that on the table. There's one difference between a saved person and an unsaved person as it relates to their sin, and here's the difference. A saved person runs to Jesus. He sits at the feet of Jesus like the demon-possessed man did the moment he wasn't possessed anymore. An unsaved person runs from Jesus. He runs and he hides and he conceals it. That's the difference. That's really important for us to know, because a lot of people think the difference is the sin part. Especially unsaved people who are critical of Christianity. Does anybody know anybody who is critical of our faith? Or maybe you're in this park and you're critical of our faith and you're just like, why are these people all together? It's hard. The difference is not the sin. So anytime anybody's like, oh, I don't like Christianity, they're all full of hypocrites, your response can just be, yep, and there's space for you too. Don't try to tell them you're not a hypocrite, because you are. I'll be the first to admit that. We totally are. We preach a God who makes us perfect, and yet look at what goes on in our lives. So it can't be the sin that makes us different. Let's just forget trying to make it look that way. If you're super concerned and you're like, I don't know, I have to make it look like I don't sin, I think that's worse. I think Jesus was more mad about that than anything. He only really yells at a couple of people in the entire witness of Scripture, and all of those people were really, really good at religion. So rather than try to be really, really good at religion, what if you just did what the demon-possessed man did every time you were tempted? And rather than like cover it up with some like religiosity, some kind of like new Bible study or new devotional that you're going to talk about to deflect from the bad in your life. What if you were just like, you know what? I'm awful. You too? Let's go talk to Jesus. What if we did that? What if all of us did that? Not like we looked at the elders and deacons of our churches, or we looked at the leaders of our ministries, or we looked at our pastors and said, that's your job, right? To be the perfect Christian in the room? What if we just acknowledge all of us are broken, all of us have fallen short, we all stink, if I can say it that way. And then we just run to Jesus and we sit at his feet and we say, Jesus, I messed up. And what's funny is often you think about, like, if you watch TV, you think of Jesus going, "Come to me, my child." But I think actually what it'll probably be like, this is not biblical, this is just me for a minute, but I think what'll probably happen is you'll run to Jesus and you'll say, "Jesus, I messed up," and he'll go, "Oh." You're like, no, you don't understand. It was awful. I was having these horrible thoughts, and he'll go, "Shh." And you'll be like, no, and he'll go, "Shh." And it'll be like that scene from Austin Powers. This is what you're doing, and this is what you should do. Just showed my age, but a couple of you laughed, so I appreciate you. Thank you for being a millennial with me. So we can be released from that temptation, and I don't want you to hear I have freedom from temptation, and so I'm not tempted anymore, because we're tempted constantly. We're tempted by our hearts. We're tempted by the world. You ever turn on the TV? It's not awesome. It's not godly. You ever looked around? You ever gone to a beach? The world is not set up to help you not be tempted. It's just not. And then, depending on where your heart is and your belief in Scripture, then there's also, so you've got the world and you've got your heart, and there's also the powers of the prince of the air, right? There's demons. You can believe in them. You can not believe in them. Jesus did. I'll just throw that out there. And they're not super helpful either. They're not leading you to the cross. They might not necessarily be leading you away from Jesus, but they're leading you away from your relationship with him. I don't think that the devil's big plan is that there won't be any believers. I think his big plan is that all of his believers will be real busy, so that they don't pay attention. And so when they sin, they're like, "It's fine. It's not fine." But it's not our captor either. We are free from our sin, and we're free from the temptations. When they come, we run back to Jesus and we say, "Hey, I messed up." And he goes, "I know. Try again." So then, okay, if those two things are true, which I believe that they are, then what do we do as we land this plane this morning? What do we do with that? So we're guilty before a holy God, and then his grace gets poured out on us. So how do we use that information to our advantage? So if you spend any time in the Reformed tradition, and this applies to everybody, but this is something particular for the Christian Reformed Church, the Reformed Church, we have this thing called the Heidelberg Catechism. And it's formatted in a particular set to help us walk through the gospel as people. And so it categorizes it in three ways. It says guilt, and then grace, and then gratitude. That's the gospel according to this document. And so whether you've loved historical Christian documents or not, which is a weird phrase to use, the gospel is there for us to use, not just for us to know. The gospel, the good news of Jesus, I'm going to say this again, is there for us to use, not just to know. Or to put it a different way, it's not to sit here, it's to sit here and here. I don't care how good you are at doctrine, I don't care how much you know about Jesus. If you walk past a person who's cold and you don't help them be less cold in the winter, you've missed it. If you walk past a person who's naked, walking from the cemetery to the shoreline, and you don't stop to ask them what's going on, you've missed it. So what are we free for? I said earlier, we're free for kingdom building. So if you still have the Bible, look back at how the passage ends. Verse 38, it says, "The man from whom the demons had gone out begged to go with him." He recognized, okay, where I belong is at the feet of Jesus always. But watch what happens. Jesus sent him away, saying, "Return home," go back to where you came from. "Tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away and told all over town how much Jesus had done for him. So Jesus gets to this place. He meets a demon-possessed man. He exorcises the demon. Everyone's freaking out. They make Jesus leave. They're like, "This is too good for me. I need you to be somewhere else." You ever had one of those moments? You go to like a revival service, or you go to a concert with all of your friends, a Christian concert, or you go to a service in the park and you just feel real good, and at the end you're like, "Yeah, I'm feeling like I'm close to Jesus right now," and then someone else is like, "Get out of here with all your positivity. You make me sick." Just me? Okay. So Jesus is asked to leave. The people of the region of the Gerasenes are like, "I don't want anything to do with this Jesus guy and his Jesus thing stuff. I don't want it. Get out of here." But Jesus says, you should stay. Because there's a lot of people who don't know me yet. You should stay. Tell everyone what God has done for you. And we're not going to do this together as a group, but I have a challenge for you if you're unfamiliar with the rest of the Gospel of Luke. Take some time later and just flip through the pages, because it's not long before Jesus shows back up in the region of the Gerasenes. And it's a very different scene. Everyone's excited that he's there. They're sick and they're wounded and they're demon possessed. They're bringing people to him. They're sitting at his feet. They want to hear his teachings. What was the difference? Jesus didn't give a sermon. His Sermon on the Mount was not there. Jesus didn't do any teachings. He showed up. He healed the guy. He left. The work was done by the guy, the healed guy. So I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hand because I just feel like that gets overused and over-dramatized. But just in your head, are you a demon-possessed man who's been healed from anything? Is there anything going on in your life that isn't any longer that you've been restored from? And the answer, if you believe in Jesus for more than 9 seconds, is yes. And so that means you have a task. Your task is to tell people. You notice what Jesus didn't say? He didn't say, hey, there's this thing you got to study. There's a bunch of scrolls you got to read. You got to know what those are. You got to be able to quote from them. And then when somebody says, oh, I don't believe in me, you have to tell them where to go in the book that I haven't written yet. Jesus says, go and tell people all that God has done for you. That's how you built the kingdom. And so I have a challenge for all of us. If you are a believer, when was the last time you talked about it? And when I say talked about it, I don't mean Sunday over coffee with your other believer friends. I mean like Thursday over work with your aggressive atheist coworker. Or with the person in line in front of you at the grocery store who's got a shirt that just has words you don't like using. That you just look at it and you're like, oh, that's offensive. What if instead of walking around going, did you see that shirt that dude was wearing? What the heck, man? What if you were like, excuse me, sir, help me understand your shirt. You don't have to be like, Jesus says not to do that. You're going to hell. Just start a relationship, start a conversation, and then if you build up enough relational capital, maybe someday you'll actually get a chance to say, hey, you know why my life is the way my life is? Because there was a time where I was really awful. And there is a God who loved me enough in my awfulness to fix me. Amen? Tell someone, build the kingdom. If I made a joke earlier about it, but I don't know if it's true or not, so I thought it was funny, but it isn't really. If you're actually in the park this morning and you don't have a relationship with Jesus, I just want to talk to you for a minute. So everybody else, pull your phone out, be bored for a second. Please don't. If you don't know Jesus, what I imagine probably happens in your mind, because it happened in mine. I'm 38 years old. I've only been a Christian for 5 minutes. I became a Christian at 31, almost 32. And so I spent a lot of time really far from God, and I did pretty much everything a person who's far from God can do. Whatever just popped in your mind, that. Probably. So don't for a minute think that whatever's going on in your life until this moment is what's keeping you from God. God isn't looking at you and going, nope, not that one. God's looking at you and going, come on, right here. Come on. So maybe today's the day for you. If today's the day, there are a number of pastors here. I am one of many. Find one of us after the service. And actually, what's neat about the Bible is you don't need a pastor to accept Christ. You just need to say it out loud. So find anyone. Can you see, if you look around, you see anyone? Anyone. Find anyone. Hey, today's my day. I'd like to accept. And that person will rejoice with you unless they're also not a believer. And then maybe you're building the kingdom right there. Wouldn't that be awesome? A non-believer leads a non-believer to the kingdom amongst a bunch of other believers who didn't know that they were sitting in the midst of a miracle happening. That would be awesome. So, okay, I'm talking to everybody again. You have a responsibility. If you don't know Jesus, your responsibility is wrestle with what that means to not know him, because today might be your last day. And if you don't know him at the end of your last day, there is a really uncomfortable place. And if you think this is hot, it's not. Not in comparison. And there's only the one shot. You only get the one. If you are a believer and there is anyone in your life that isn't, you're not done yet. Collectively, we all went. That feels like a lot. But Jesus says, don't worry about it. It's not your burden. It's my burden. I'm going to carry the burden. You're going to do the work. Go tell people about me. And then the next time Jesus shows up in conversation, there's going to be a lot more people that love him, because that's what happened. Jesus went to the Gerasenes and people were like, Jesus! And he's like, all right. He listened. Or I guess to put it a little more biblically, he went, well done, good and faithful servant. And that's what we're seeking to hear in our own mind at our last day. I want to hear at the end of a very long list of horrible crap that I did. I want to hear that. And I think you should want that also. And so we're going to end there. I'd like if you pray with me one more time. Father God, we thank you for the way you are at work in our lives. We thank you for the opportunity to hear from you, to hear the gospel, to be changed by it. Your word says the gospel is power from you. It's transformative power for salvation. And it's free. And it's a gift. So we thank you that you thought enough of your broken, sinful people to give us a gift. We ask that our worship will be pleasing to you this morning. I ask that your spirit would be active, that anybody's heart here is far from you would be turned. That they would look up, that they would see you, they would feel at home for the first time. I ask that anybody who knows you but has wandered away would be drawn back. And that anybody who sits in this place on fire for you might be on fire out loud, where others can hear and see them. So that your kingdom might be built here in Fremont, that a revival might begin, that this place might be on fire, and that for generations to come, people would look at the people on this grassy field today and say, those people loved Jesus. We pray this in his name. Amen. Would you stand and we're going to worship together one more time?